Stephen Colbert has been known to everyone for decades as the charming host of The Late Show. We laughed, thought, and sometimes even moved around in our seats because of his wit and humor. And yet, a complicated. Behind his famous image and charming smile is an interesting person. Fans' questions have led to shocking discoveries about his personal life, which has been a secret for years to keep the public from prying eyes. What inspires him to be so artistic and strong in his beliefs? What? What lies beneath the surface of his on-screen persona? If these questions sound familiar, stay tuned as we learn more about Stephen's life and the shocking facts that we find out. Life and education before fame. Stephen Tyrone Colbert is an American comedian, actor, and writer who was born in Washington, D.C. on May 13, 1964. As the 11th child and youngest, his dad, James William Colbert Jr., was an immunologist and head of medical schools at a number of well-known schools. His mother, Lorna Elizabeth Colbert, ran the household. James III, Edward, Mary, William, Margot, Thomas, J., Elizabeth, Paul, and Peter were Stephen's 10 brothers. They grew up in a Catholic home in Bethesda, Maryland, and were told to follow the rules. Stephen didn't think it was funny to grow up in a big family because they couldn't get everything they needed. But even though things were hard, they made do with what little money they had and were happy. Sadly, a terrible thing happened. It happened 10 years before he was born. On their way to Charlotte, North Carolina, his father and two older brothers, Paul and Peter, died in a plane crash. The family was left thinking what to do next after the terrible event. Following that event, his mother moved from Ireland's James to Charleston's St. George Chisholm House. Even though it was hard, they had to get over what happened. Stephen never fully got better, though, and every time he thought about it, the pain seemed new. Stephen Colbert went to Episcopal Porter God School in Charleston. He loved school and did things outside of school like school plays that he was really good at. Even though he wasn't very good at writing, he was great at playing. What was going on was odd because he had always wanted to study underwater life and scuba dive. But all of those. His dreams came to an end when he had surgery on his ears, which left his right ear deaf. That seemed to make him give up on his first dream. He chose to try something more natural, like acting, but how well did that work out? Stephen got into Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia to study philosophy after high school, which was in 1982. He tried to improve his playing skills at Hampton-Sydney College, but it was hard because the school didn't have the right tools. That's possible thanks to great theater venues and a lively theater community. He asked to be transferred to Northwestern University of Communication 2 years after being accepted. He chose Northwestern University because he loved playing and knew it had everything he needed. Here he learned a lot of different things in acting and took advantage of every chance he had before he graduated in 1986. This meant that he would finally be able to use the skills he had developed at Northwestern in a real-life setting. Was it going to be worth it? What did he think his chances were in the entertainment business? And how did he deal with the problems that he faced to become the famous person he is now? Do not stop keeping an eye on us as we reveal more information about his work and long-kept personal secrets. Early career and rise to fame. Stephen's first job after college was at the box office of Second City, where he answered the phone and sold souvenirs. He went for it, even though it wasn't even close to what he wanted. He signed up for a free training class at Second City's training center while he was working there. Stephen Colbert usually wouldn't be interested in this, but he didn't rue the experience either. He got to know Steve Carell, Amy Sedaris, and Paul Dinello through this. He wasn't too friendly with Amy Sedaris and Paul Dinello at first, but as they worked together, they became friends. Not long after that, Amy Sedaris and Paul Dinello were given chances in New York to make a a TV show for home box office downtown production. This seemed like a once-in-a-lifetime chance, so Stephen Colbert left Second City right away to go with them to New York. The three of them worked together on a 30-minute comedy show called Exit 57, which played on the American TV channel Comedy Central from 1995 to 2006. Some of the actors were from Second City and were Amy Sedaris, Stephen Colbert, Paul Dinello, and Mitch Rouse. With the Best Script Performance in Comedy Series, the show was up for 5 Cablease Awards in 1995. There were 12 episodes, and turn off. After leaving Exit 57, Stephen went to work on the Dana Carvey Show, an American Broadcasting Company sketch comedy show created by Dana Carvey and starring her. At that point, though, this didn't look like the breakthrough he needed, even with all the work and time that went into The show stars Steve Carell, Robert Smigel, and Louis C.K. The show with Stephen Colbert, Dino Stamatopoulos, and others didn't get many viewers, and sponsors quit after the first episode. The show was canceled after 7 episodes that didn't get many viewers or good numbers. Still, it wasn't Stephen's loss because he could learn more and get better at what he does. Even the bad reviews showed how things could be made better. Stephen worked as a writer on the Saturday Night Show with Robert Smigel after leaving the Dana Carvey Show. It was there that he met the producer of The Daily Show. In 1997, Madeline Smithberg hired him for a practice run as in the show. After 2 years, Stephen got another chance to be in Strangers with Candy. This time he played Chuck Noblet, a science teacher who was known for being funny. Amy Sedaris played Jerry Blank, a 46-year-old failure who went back to high school to finish after 32 years of living on the streets. The show wasn't a big hit at first, but over time it became popular and built a following of loyal fans, no matter how small. It had 30 shows over 3 seasons and was better than the Dana Carvey Show. Stephen Colbert felt encouraged to keep going. This young man's life didn't seem to be full of secrets based on how open he was about his job. He seemed more interested in getting ahead in the show business than in anything else. When did the lies start to come out in his life? This subject has been hard to understand. Is there more to this goal-setting process than meets the eye? Watch on and we'll find out. Stephen Colbert came back after leaving Strangers with Candy and worked more on The Daily Show. He was one of the reporters, but he brought his own brand of satire and wit to the show, which made it a must-see for viewers. Madeline Smithberg, Liz Winstead, and Jon Stewart produced this show. Stephen worked with Steve Carell, Brian Unger, and Vance DeGeneres on it, which helped him improve his natural acting skills. Stephen Colbert got 3 Emmys for this show because they wrote for the show from 2004 to 2006. For the young, driven actor, this looked like a slow rise to fame. Stephen used his experience from 8 years on The Daily Show to start The Colbert Report. He played a fake version of himself on this spin-off show. He was honest about some parts of his life and funny about others. This show ran on Funny. The show Central from 2005 is one of Stephen Colbert's most famous works. This changed Stephen's whole career and made him one of the most well-known and loved people in the business. He got a lot of praise for this new path, and the show was nominated for a number of Emmy and Peabody Awards. With 9 great seasons under his belt, Stephen ended The Colbert Report in December 2014, ready to take on a bigger and better challenge. In late, David Letterman announced early that April 14th that he was retiring from The Late Show. That same month, it was made official that Stephen Colbert would take over. The first episode of this new show with Stephen Colbert in 2015 on Columbian Broadcasting Method. This was more than just an important step in his life. On this show, Stephen Colbert talked about a range of issues such as comedy, politics, and entertainment. He had a lot of famous people on his show, and some of the talks went well and some didn't. These were some of the. There were times when his career almost ended. A lot of people were against him, and there were a lot of backlashes that would have hurt him more than helped him. But he kept going. Want to know how? Wait and see. Stephen Colbert's many scandals, even though he is a famous and loved person. The dynamic host of The Late Show, Stephen Colbert, has had his fair share of problems and backlash over the course of his long and successful career. Now that I think about it, you almost never hear about a famous person or star without hearing about some kind of trouble. It's true that fame comes with, for a fee. So what does he have against him? Stephen hosts and talks to a lot of famous people in the country as part of his job as a TV personality. But not every time he was on screen, things went so well. The introduction of Stephen Colbert's idea of truthiness in 2005 caused a lot of trouble, which is one of the most famous issues involving him. Mostly because it made fun of and brought attention to the way people, especially in politics and the media, tend to trust their gut feelings and personal beliefs over facts and proof. Stephen says that this idea means having a strong belief in something, even if there isn't enough evidence to support it. This was a straight attack on how some politicians and media personalities presented information. He warned about the risks of spreading false information and losing the ability to think critically when people focus on their feelings instead of facts. The phrase hit home with people and quickly made its way into everyday language. People who thought Colbert was too dismissive of people's real views, however, also said bad things about it. Stephen supported his idea, though, saying that it showed how dangerous it is to control others. The facts. This argument made it clear how important it is to be able to think critically and understand how the media works in today's world. For another example, there was the debate over the hashtag Cancel Colbert in 2014. A tweet. Posts from the Colbert Report's official account made fun of Asian stereotypes, which caused anger and made the hashtag Cancel Colbert popular on Twitter. The tweet was just a joke, but it made a lot of people angry. The joke was about Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington Redskins, trying to get along with Native Americans again without changing the name of the team. I'm willing to show the Asian community I care by starting the Ching Chong Ding Dong Foundation for Sensitivity to Orientals or something like that, it said. This was meant to make fun of Snyder's plan, but it used hurtful language that made Asian people sound bad. It hurt many people and was racist. Even though it was only 140 characters long, it made a stir. A lot of people didn't like Colbert and wanted his show to end. It turned out that Stephen Colbert wasn't behind the tweet, though. He later said that the tweet was taken out of context and was meant to make fun of the foundation of Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder. But the damage was already done, and Stephen was accused of racism. As some people said mean things about Stephen Colbert, but others stood up for him by saying he is a comedian. Even though the Colbert Report didn't have to be canceled in the end, Stephen still needed to say sorry to everyone in the Asian community. People think that just because someone is a comedian doesn't mean what they say. It's not okay for a group of people to be upset by all the laughing. That was a very heated and important moment in Stephen's life, his career, but the famous person stood his ground. But the backlashes didn't stop there. Was that all? Well, the long list of problems and backlash had only just started. There were a lot of heated arguments in May 2017 when Stephen Colbert spoke out against Donald Trump. An offensive and homophobic joke was told by Stephen during his speech on The Late Show about President Trump at the time and Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. This caused another big backlash on social media, where many people said Stephen should be fired. However, the Federal Communications Commission started a probe after receiving many complaints, but they did not later file any charges against Stephen, even though he had to. He responded to the backlash but refused to say sorry, saying that his words were about Trump's policies, not his sexuality. This led to calls for boycotts. This controversy led to a bigger discussion about free speech, satire, and what public people should do. Stephen Colbert was recently involved in another situation that got him in trouble. These words came from two angry men who were trying to get on each other's nerves. They were very heated. People asked him if he would ever call former President Donald Trump on his show, and he bluntly said, "I had him on the show before, and he was kind of boring, so no, this was the start of everything." He was probably telling the truth and what was on his mind, but that made me nervous. It wasn't a big surprise, though, when Donald Trump shot back at Stephen. Donald Trump said about Stephen, "Why do they pay him so much for being funny when he's not? He's not. He is smart, but very dull." That was a pretty answer. Was Stephen going to ignore this? It didn't look like it. He then said something back to the insult. First, he said, "I'm flattered that you had time to hate watch me during the heated presidential campaign." The most annoying part, though, was when he said, "Wait a minute. You are 78 years old. You are no longer part of the practice. No one cares if you pay attention." That was a pretty strong response. Stephen thought, though, that he might have called Trump boring to annoy him, which it did. Still, Trump said that the Colombian broadcasting system should not renew its deal with Stephen Colbert and instead hire someone better for less money or for free. Throughout his career, Stephen Colbert showed that he could bounce back from setbacks and being able to change when things go wrong. This shows the good and bad things that happen when you're famous. Who is on your side doesn't matter. Some people will find something bad about you to say. No matter how much you like or dislike Stephen Colbert, he is still a major force in American culture. The things he left behind show how hard it is to deal with scandals and humor in public. A lot of people didn't know these secrets about Stephen Colbert that almost ended his job as a public figure. Many people are now wondering what other secrets are connected to these shocking findings. A famous person. Are you sure there are more? Watch this video to find out the answers to these questions. Love at first sight. Have you ever thought about how many marriages and relationships the famous Stephen Colbert has had? In many cases, celebs have been involved in divorces. But Stephen's case hasn't been one of those cases. He was in love with her for 31 years. Many people think his marriage to Evelyn McGee Colbert is like a fairy story. They are still in love and put on a show in celebration of their love that everyone loves. You might want to ask, isn't this a movie scene? When you hear how they met, it was more like a pleasant meeting between Cinderella and the prince she loved. They met at a show in the early 1990s and have been together ever since. The two knew they were meant to be together, even though they were far apart. But would you believe that Stephen and Evelyn grew up in Charleston? Isn't it interesting? They were both born and raised were in the same place, and lived only 2 blocks apart. They knew about each other's families, but they didn't know they existed. Isn't that crazy? They went to different schools and got different degrees, but they both liked acting. Before they met in the early 1990s. Stephen Colbert was seeing another woman who loved him, and he loved someone else back. She kept asking when they were going to get married, but Stephen wasn't sure if he wanted to marry her. But when she said she would break up with him if he didn't agree to marry her, he knew he had to act quickly because it was the only choice. Going to Charleston to have a serious talk with his mother about it made him feel better. Their mother confirmed what he already knew, and he was sure she wasn't the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. They chose to go see a show at the Spoleto Festival after that talk. He had no idea what was going on. That's where he would meet his ideal woman. Right there at the fair, though, Stephen looked up as he walked down the hall and saw a stunningly beautiful woman across the hall. He knew right away that Evelyn McGee was the one for him, his soul mate. Eventually, it came out that Stephen wasn't the only one who felt that way about Evelyn. She did too. When asked about how, when they met, Evelyn said that Stephen made her feel good when she saw him. They didn't waste any time starting that spark and watching it grow into something beautiful. They walked down the aisle together and tied the knot in a beautiful wedding on October 9th, 1993. What was? For decades, love at first sight has stayed a real love. People still think that the couple must have had some hard times in their marriage, even though they have shown the public how much they love each other. How could this be true? Could it be that the love and sweetness that people see in Colbert's marriage is all a show? Could it be love in heaven? Let's find out. Trouble in heaven or a lovely house? Stephen Colbert and Evelyn McGee Colbert's beautiful love story began in 1993 and has now lasted 31 years. What a long time. People are still asking how their love grows without hitting a rock. This has been a thing of worry. Stephen and Evelyn have had a strong and supportive friendship for as long as anyone can remember. They have had problems, though, just like any other pair. Of course, no marriage is perfect. Stephen Colbert has talked freely about having a nervous breakdown soon after their wedding, which was a hard time for him. Even so, they have been able to keep their love marriage going for a long time. He often talks about their relationship and shares thoughts and stories that show how important it is to talk to each other and help each other. The couple seems to have a strong relationship based on trust and shared values. The famous person has talked about his wife many times as a skilled, loving, and caring wife and mom. He often says that she gives him hope when things are hard. She supports and encourages him in his work goals and gives him helpful feedback whenever she can, as if that's what she was meant to do. They're more of a team because they help each other out in all things in life. So it makes sense that Stephen Colbert said in an interview that his wife is the reason he can do everything he does. She is always there for him, good times and bad. Many people have seen the couple on TV shows like The Colbert Report and The Late Show, where they were in funny bits and sketches. A pair that never misses a chance to show how passionate they are about each other. The way they love each other is an example to follow. As always, it's important for them to mark their area. A few weeks ago, Stephen Colbert told Oprah Winfrey that his wife is the best thing that has ever happened to him. They still have disagreements, though. It means that even though they fight, they don't let it ruin their beautiful love. The Colberts have 3 wonderful children, born not long after they got married. Madeline was their first child. She was born in 1995, 2 years after they got married. And at this point, Stephen Colbert had just started to work in show business. He had been in the Exit 57 just now. Stephen had their second child, Peter, 3 years after the first one, in 1998. Just began working on The Daily Show. While Stephen was still working on The Daily Show in 2002, the couple had their last child and decided that was the end of their family. Stephen Colbert has probably said nice things about how thankful he is for his loved and helpful family. This goes a long way toward showing that marriage can last and be strong, even when things seem impossible to overcome. They only need to be ready and willing to help each other through it. The good and bad times. So, besides the many complaints and scandals linked to his name, what other lies about his personal life have been kept secret for years? Watch this space as we reveal that part of his life. Problems in his personal life. Stephen Colbert has always been a devout Catholic, following in his parents' steps. The Universal Life Church Monastery has given him the title of minister. He also has an undeniable love for reading, which he gained when he was young. This side of him doesn't get as much attention as his on-screen image. Stephen Colbert has had both good times and bad times, as well as criticism. Another part of his life that the public knows about. Who doesn't know about his personal problems and health issues? In an interview with Rolling Stones in 2018, Stephen admitted that he had grown up with depression and anxiety while in college and at Second City. He had to be put on medicine to help him deal with these problems. I took anxiety medicine because I thought I had messed up my life by trying, he said. Something really tough. Xanax, a fast-acting tranquilizer that is usually given to treat anxiety for a moderate amount of time, was the only drug that helped a little. But I quickly understood that it wasn't fixing the issue, it was just covering it up. It helped to calm it down, but it wasn't strong enough to get rid of the trouble. The 9 days were up, and I quit taking it to deal with my worry head-on. I woke up one day feeling like myself again. I was sure it was a dream, because it felt like one. I felt fine the next day and for days after that. All of a sudden I realized that making art and performance kept me grounded. I haven't. I gave up acting because it helps me keep my balance. This might be why Stephen made sure to find another acting job almost as soon as he quit the last one. He thought of that as his support system to get through the scary road of anxiety and depression. Since it helped, he didn't see any reason to give up. In April 2012, when he thought that was all, he tested positive for COVID-19 and had symptoms that came back weeks later. This caused The Late Show to stop airing, but he made it through. It came as a surprise that he tested positive again in October 23rd. He was lucky to have lived through it the second time, though. In November 1993, while filming a show, his colon burst, which meant he had to take another break for surgery. Get better. After getting better, he went back to the show on December 11th, that same year. All of these times seemed to be times when the famous person was having health problems, but he kept going and has continued to stand tall. You might want to know what his life is like now after reading this. Is he still working in television, or has he moved on to something else? If you're interested, keep watching as we talk about his present-day life. Stephen Colbert has made a name for himself over the years as a TV star, but he has also been active in civic and charitable work. Besides that, he is famous for being very kind, helpful, and generous, always helping people in need. He has often used the fact that he is a famous and loved figure to make being aware of significant social problems. He has, for example, held charity events for Amnesty International, an organization that fights for human rights around the world, and given money to Autism Speaks, a group that funds research into autism. He has also raised money for good causes with his show in the past. At one point, he made a deal with Microsoft to give $2,500 to help pay for the British petroleum oil spill. Every time he said "Bing" on the radio. At the end of the day, he said it about 40 times. A picture from the Colbert Report that he sold on eBay also brought in cash. All of these things were ways for him to raise money, not for himself or his family, but for people who needed a way to stay alive but couldn't afford one. Stephen Colbert is still a very well-known person with a lot of followers on social media sites like Twitter, where he supports many causes and charities. It has been shown that he cares about the well-being of everyone he can reach, not because they can give him something in return, but because he loves people. He got rich and famous with many. He has won many awards and titles, But the most important thing is the good name he has built for himself. That is something that will be passed down from one family to the next. In Montclair, New Jersey, Stephen Colbert lives with his family. He has also stayed on as a host on The Late Show. He has kept up his charitable work, which has changed the lives of many people around the world. We now know about Stephen. When it comes to Colbert's personal life, we can't help but wonder what's next. Will he keep pushing the limits, or are there still more secrets to be revealed? We are excited to see what Stephen Colbert has in store for us next. Please tell us what you think in the space below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. Please click on the movie that is shown on your screen before you leave.